I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a moment that was deeply sad, yet there was some source of external joy in it. It was the final day of a church that we planted together with God in Dundee, Oregon. And I love those people. I still do. I think of them often and pray for them when my mind goes to them. And the church closed. And ironically, as we at the church I'm serving now is on like a precipice, we're moving into this new building. We're moving into the building really soon. I can't help but think also of times when it seemed like there wasn't as big of a harvest, like there wasn't like a new building we're moving into. Actually, it was quite hard and difficult. And as I think of prayers that have been prayed, I think of the book of Habakkuk. Really, the book of Habakkuk is it's a kind of a funny name of a prophet. It's in the minor prophets, and it's only 3 chapters, and there's really like 3 big complaints. Really, the whole thing's around crying out to God. And Habakkuk, actually, in his time, is really struggling with what's going on in his life and the people around him. The book begins like this: "How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you don't listen? Or cry out to you violence, but no one, but you do not save anyone? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There's strife and conflict around me. Therefore the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous so that justice is perverted." Like there's injustice going on. And maybe many of us have been seeing that maybe in different places of our lives this last couple of years, and seeing, or maybe it's been heightened in some of our awareness of things that are going on, maybe within our own country, the United States, or other places in the world. And Habakkuk's really struggling with this. God, if you're good, why aren't you engaging in this? Well, then God begins to answer some things and begins to say, I'm going to do some things in your time that you wouldn't even believe if I told you. And then his prayer complaint begins to challenge a little more. It says, well, God, yeah, but what about the nations? And why would you let them off? They're wicked. They're worse than we are. And God's saying, I'm not turning my blind eye, but there's something going about in your time that you would not believe if I told you. So we see this arc of change in the 3 chapters, actually, of Habakkuk. And so Habakkuk, finally, at chapter 3, kind of almost accepts that even though he can't quite understand what's in front of him, and what's in front of the people of Israel, as a prophet, he will proclaim it, and he will trust that God is still good. And there's a profound statement, actually, that actually was the very text that we preached the final Sunday of the church that we planted, and we're there 8.5, almost 9 years, in Oregon. And it was this. It's the very end of Habakkuk. And it says this: "Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crops fail and the fields produce no fruit, though there are no sheep in the pens and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God, my Savior. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to go on to the heights." And that's how the book ends. That's how his prayer ends. It begins with this huge complaint: God, where are you? There's injustice everywhere. And somehow in the midst of this hardship, there's no hope in the future. And he's using the imagery of grain or animals. There's no prospering in the future. Like it seems like everything's ebbing away. And yet, a defiant yet, I will rejoice in the Lord. That's powerful. And then he says, the sovereign Lord is my strength. I preach this literally through tears, as I believe in that moment that God was good, and that even though the church was closing, God was not done. And he wasn't. And those believers are still followers of Jesus, and God's still using us all over the place. But I can't help but know that there are times perhaps that you and I are in where it seems like there is no hope beyond. And there is a willing, not will-filled, but willing response to God to have joy in God, a defiant, nevertheless, holding on to God and God alone, not our circumstance, and trusting and submitting even that the sovereign Lord is my strength. I wonder today how God can be a sense of source of joy for you in the circumstance you're in. And there's an intentionality turning that way. I wonder today how God can be and is available to be a source of strength for you today. The sovereign Lord is my strength, even in the midst of times that seem overwhelming. Right now, we're in a time of great, I think, fruit and things like that. But I can't help but remember in the book of Habakkuk that it's in times of hardship that I'm reminded most of God's goodness and that he is not only the source of my joy, but my strength. I'd encourage you to read, if you want to, the book of Habakkuk. It's not very long, 3 chapters, and it's smaller even than Jonah. And actually at the end, sit with that last couple verses, asking God how God might be a source of joy in your life today and how he might be a source of strength for you to endure whatever's ahead. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.